I never wanted to believe the things I saw in that mirror. I kept telling myself it was grief playing tricks on my mind, that losing my mother at 15 had fractured something inside me that would never properly heal. But what I witnessed in the reflection of my stepmother's vanity mirror wasn't sadness. It was something else entirely, something that had been waiting for me all along. My father met Catherine 6 months after my mother's death. I remember thinking how incredibly fast he was, how he managed to move on while I still found strands of my mother's hair on the sofa, still smelled her perfume in the hallways. Catherine was beautiful in a way that seemed almost aggressive. Tall, with fair skin that seemed to glow in certain lights, dark hair that fell in perfect waves, and eyes so blue they seemed artificial. She smiled constantly, but her eyes never changed. They watched, they calculated, they waited. The wedding happened quickly. They didn't ask me if I was ready. They didn't ask me anything at all. One day, my father sat me down and told me that Catherine was moving in, that she would be my new mother, that I should give her a chance. I agreed, because what else could I do? I was a child trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from, and now there was a stranger sleeping in my mother's bed, wearing my mother's robe, sitting in my mother's chair eating breakfast. Catherine was kind at first, almost too kind. She cooked my favorite dishes without me even mentioning them. She bought clothes exactly my size and style. She seemed to know things about me that I had never shared with anyone, not even my father. When I asked her how she knew, she just smiled that and changing smile ends said she was observant, that she paid attention because she cared. The mirror appeared 2 weeks after she moved in. It was an antique vanity mirror, huge and ornate, with a carved frame of dark wood that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The glass itself had a strange quality, a little darker than ordinary mirrors, with a depth that made you feel like you could fall into it if you stared too long. Catherine placed it in the master bedroom, angled so it faced the hallway. Every time I passed, I could glance into that mirror, see the reflection of their room, see Catherine sitting at her vanity, combing her hair with long, methodical strokes. I began to avoid that hallway. Something about that mirror disturbed me in a way I couldn't express. It wasn't just that it was old and strange. It was the feeling I got from seeing my reflection in it. For just a moment, just a split second, I saw something different. My face looked older, sadder, more desperate. My eyes pleaded with me, trying to tell me something urgent and terrible. Then I blinked, and everything returned to normal. Just me. Just my normal reflection, looking confused and scared. I told myself I was imagining things. Grief affects perception in strange ways. Trauma rewires the brain. I read about it online, searching for explanations for why I felt so disoriented at home. But the incidents kept happening and getting worse. One night, I woke up thirsty and went downstairs to get water. The house was dark except for a dim light coming from the master bedroom. I crept closer, drawn by curiosity and something else, something I couldn't name. Through the crack in the door, I saw Catherine standing in front of the mirror. She was completely still, staring at her reflection with an intensity that chilled me, but it wasn't her posture that made me freeze in the hallway. It was what I saw in the mirror. Her reflection moved differently. While Catherine remained still, her reflection smiled wider, tilting her head at an unnatural angle, and her eyes were fixed not on herself, but on something behind her. On me, even though the real Catherine hadn't moved, hadn't turned, her reflection was staring directly at where I stood, in the dark hallway. And then it blinked. I ran back to my room and locked the door, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I tried to convince myself I was half asleep, that I had misunderstood what I had seen, but I knew the truth. I was wide awake. And whatever I had seen in that mirror wasn't a trick of the light or a drowsy hallucination. It was real, and it had seen me. The next morning, Catherine was her usual self. Cheerful, attentive, impeccable. She made pancakes, asked about my homework, and told my father about her plans to redecorate the living room she didn't mention the night before. She never admitted anything strange had happened. But when she looked at me across the breakfast table, I saw something flicker in those blue eyes. Recognition, amusement, warning. I began researching mirrors. I spent hours in the library and online reading about folklore and superstitions, about portals, reflections, and things that live in the space between reality and their image. I learned that mirrors had always been considered dangerous in certain cultures, that they were covered when someone died to prevent the soul from becoming trapped, that some people believed mirrors could show one's true self or reveal hidden things about the world. I read about mirror doppelgangers, entities that could exist in reflections and connect with our world if given the chance. The more I learned, the more terrified I became. Because everything I read seemed to confirm what I was seeing. Catherine wasn't just my stepmother. She was something else, something that had found its way into our world through that mirror, something that had a human form but wasn't human underneath. I tried to talk to my father. I chose my words carefully, trying not to sound mad. I told him I felt uncomfortable around Catherine, that there was something wrong with her. He became angry in a way I'd never seen before. He told me I was being disrespectful, that Catherine had done nothing but try to make me feel welcome, that I was letting my pain turn me into someone cruel and ungrateful. He said that if I couldn't accept Catherine as part of our family, maybe I needed to see a therapist. Someone who could help me work through my problems. I stopped trying to convince him. I realized he couldn't see what I saw. Or maybe he could, but the thing about Catherine's face had already sunk too deep into his mind. He looked at her with a devotion that seemed almost drugged, talking about her in a way that sounded nothing like him. My father had been taken from me as completely as my mother, but he still walked around, still went to work, still sat across from me at dinner. It was worse than death. It was the erasure. The incidents in the mirror intensified. I glimpsed things that shouldn't have been there. Sometimes I saw my mother's face staring back at me through the glass, her mouth moving in silent warnings. Sometimes I saw other people, strangers with desperate looks, their hands pressed against the glass as if trapped inside. And always, I saw Catherine's reflection, behaving differently than Catherine herself, moving with a strange grace, smiling with extra teeth, watching me with predatory patience. I became obsessed with the mirror. I knew it was the source of everything wrong in our home. Whatever it was, Catherine had come through that mirror, and the mirror held its connection to her origin. If I could destroy the mirror, maybe I could break its power. Maybe I could bring my father back. Maybe I could save us both. But the mirror was always in their room, and Catherine was always near it. She had begun to spend more and more time in front of him, sitting at her vanity for hours, combing her hair, applying unnecessary makeup, staring into the mirror with that fixed, hungry expression. I would hear her talking sometimes, late at night, talking to her reflection. The reflection would respond with a voice that sounded like Catherine's, but with different inflections and cadences. They would laugh together, and the sound echoed strangely through the house. My father began to change. He became thinner, paler, walking around the house like a ghost. His eyes were always tired, with dark circles under them. He stopped going to work as regularly. He forgot things, important things, like my birthday and parent-teacher conferences. When I tried to talk to him, he would look at me confused, as if he wasn't quite sure who I was. Catherine was feeding on him somehow, sucking something essential from him, and the mirror was helping her do it. I decided I had to act. I couldn't wait any longer. My father was disappearing, and I would be next. I could feel Catherine's attention turning more intensely to me, felt her studying me like a scientist studying a specimen. She began commenting on how much I resembled my mother, touching my hair and face with cool fingers, telling me I was becoming so beautiful, so perfect. The way she said it gave me chills. It didn't sound like a compliment. It sounded like an assessment, as if she were evaluating me for something. I waited until they left for dinner. Catherine had insisted they have a romantic date, just the two of them. She smiled at me as they left, that empty smile that never reached her eyes, and told me not to wait up. As soon as their car pulled out of the driveway, I ran upstairs to their bedroom. The mirror loomed larger in the empty room, more imposing. The carved frame seemed almost alive in the dim light, the wooden figures seeming to writhe and move when I wasn't looking directly at them. I could feel the mirror watching me, aware of my presence and my intentions. The glass seemed to pulse with a faint, sickly light. I grabbed a baseball bat from the cabinet and raised it above my head. My reflection stared back at me, but it wasn't quite right. It was smiling when I wasn't. Its eyes were eager, excited. As I started to swing the bat at the glass, my reflection's mouth opened, and my mother's voice came out, "No." She said, "Please, no. We're all here. If you break it, we'll be trapped forever." I froze, the bat suspended in midair. In the depths of the mirror, behind my flawed reflection, I saw them. Dozens of faces, maybe hundreds, pressed against the glass from the inside. Men, women, children, all with desperate, pleading expressions. And there, among them, I saw my mother's face clearly now. She looked exactly as she had the day she died, wearing the same clothes, the same expression of fear and confusion. "Mother," I whispered. "She's taking us," my mother's voice said, but it was coming from my reflection's mouth, which made it eerie and surreal. "She finds people who are vulnerable, who are grieving, who are open. She slips through the mirror into their lives, and when she drains them of everything they have, she brings them back. We are all her victims from the past. We are all trapped here, existing as echoes, as food for whatever she really is. How do I stop her?" I asked. "You can't destroy the mirror," my reflection said in my mother's voice. "But you can trap her in it. She's not yet fully in your world. She's still connected to the mirror, still partially here with us. If you can push her back in, seal it before she returns, she'd be trapped like us. How do I push her back?" My reflection smiled, and this time it was my mother's smile, sad and loving and real. "Make her look. Make her really look at herself. Make her see what she really is. Monsters can't stand their own reflection. That's why she's always looking at the false image she projects. Force her to see the truth, and she recoil through the mirror. But you have to be quick. You have to seal this immediately." I heard the car pulling into the driveway. They were home early. I had about 2 minutes before they came upstairs. "How do I seal this?" I asked frantically. "Cover it," my mother said, "completely. Never let light touch the glass again. Without light, there is no reflection. Without reflection, there is no passage between worlds. Keep it covered forever, and she will be trapped here with us. She will get what she deserves." The front door opened downstairs. I heard Catherine's laughter, that strange, musical sound that had never sounded human to me. I heard her heels clicking on the hardwood floor, heading for the stairs. I ran to my room and grabbed the heaviest blanket I had. When I returned, Catherine was standing in the bedroom doorway, watching me. Her smile had disappeared. Her blue eyes were flat and cold, reptilian. She seemed taller, her proportions slightly out of proportion, her shadow stretching too far across the floor. "What are you doing?" she asked, and her voice was layered now, several tones speaking in unison. "I know what you are," I said, holding the blanket like a shield. She tilted her head at that impossible angle I'd seen her reflection make. "Do you believe? Do you really believe? Because I don't think your small mind can comprehend what I truly am. I am older than your species. I am hunger given form. I am that which waits in reflections and dreams. I am patient, eternal, and utterly inevitable. You're a parasite, I said. And you'll go back to where you came from. I stepped closer to the mirror. Catherine moved to intercept me, faster than any human being should move. But I was prepared for this. I threw the baseball bat at her face. She dodged easily, dismissively, but it bought me the seconds I needed. I grabbed the mirror's frame and swung it around, pointing it directly at Catherine. Look at yourself, I screamed. Look at what you really are. Catherine's eyes widened. She tried to look away, but it was as if the mirror had its own gravity, drawing her gaze. I saw her face in the reflection and saw what my mother and all the other victims had seen. The thing behind the beautiful mask. Its reflection showed something vast and writhing, something with too many limbs and mouths, something that existed in more dimensions than the three we occupied. It was made of hunger, darkness, and the spaces between things. It was constantly devouring and regenerating itself. A perpetual cycle of consumption that could never be satisfied. It was horrible, pitiful, and utterly evil. Catherine screamed. It wasn't a human sound. It was like glass breaking, metal ripping, and animals dying all at once. Her body began to distort, her careful human form crumbling as she was pulled toward the mirror. She grasped at the air, the ground, anything she could reach. But the mirror was taking her back, sucking her into its depths, where she belonged. I watched her slide into the glass like someone falling into dark water. For an instant, she hung suspended there on the surface of the mirror, her face pressed against the interior of the glass, her mouth open in a silent howl of rage. Then she sank even deeper, pulled into the depths where all the other faces waited. My mother was there, smiling. She reached out in the reflection and touched Catherine's face, and I saw something pass between them. Justice, perhaps, or just recognition. One victim welcoming another into their shared prison. I threw the blanket over the mirror. The moment once the glass was covered, the room fell silent. The oppressive presence that had gripped the house for months was gone. I could breathe again. I could think clearly. The air felt lighter, cleaner, more real. I heard my father coming down the stairs, calling my name in a confused voice. He sounded like himself again, as if the fog had lifted from his mind. I knew he wouldn't remember most of what had happened. The thing with Catherine's face had kept him in a kind of waking dream, and now that she was gone, the dream was ending. He would have gaps in his memory, lost time, confusion about how the months had passed. But he would be himself again. He would be my father again. I've kept the mirror covered for 3 years. It's still at home, locked in. The basement, wrapped in layers of blankets and sealed in darkness. Sometimes, late at night, I think I hear sounds coming from downstairs, scratching, whispering, pleading. I don't know if it's Catherine trying to escape, or my mother trying to communicate, or just my imagination filling the silence with fears. I don't go down to check. I never will. My father and I don't talk about that year. He thinks Catherine abandoned him, ran off with another man, or simply disappeared one day. I let him believe it. It's easier than the truth. Some nights, I see him looking at old photos, trying to piece together memories that seem wrong to him, trying to figure out why there are gaps in his mind. I want to help him, but I don't know how to explain that the woman he married wasn't a woman. I'm 18 now. I'm going to college in a few months. My father wants to sell the house, start over somewhere. I told him that's fine, but the mirror stays with me. He looked relieved, as if a part of him understood without understanding, as if his subconscious remembered what his conscious mind had forgotten. I'll take it with me wherever I go. I'll keep it covered. I'll make sure it's never exposed to light again. It's my responsibility now, my burden, the price for saving my father and me. Sometimes I wonder about the thing that called itself Catherine. I wonder if it's suffering in that mirrored prison, trapped with all its victims, finally experiencing the hunger and emptiness it inflicted on others. Sometimes I wonder if it's planning its escape, counting down the years, decades, and centuries until someone accidentally discovers the mirror and gives it another chance. Sometimes I have nightmares where it's me in the mirror, pressed against the cold glass, watching my reflection live my life while screaming inaudible warnings that no one believes. But mostly, I try not to think about it. I try to live normally, go to school, make friends, and plan a future that feels real, solid, and mine. I try to forget the feeling of being watched by something ancient and hungry. I try to forget my stepmother's smile and the way her reflection moved with its own terrible will. I try to forget the faces in the depths of the mirror, all those victims existing as eternal echoes of themselves. I try to forget my mother's voice coming from her mouth, of my own reflection, warning me, guiding me, and saying goodbye one last time. The mirror sits in my closet now, covered, dark, and waiting. I check the blankets every night before I sleep, making sure they're secure, making sure no corner has come loose to let in the slightest ray of light. Because I know what lives inside. I know what's waiting for the chance to return to our world. And I know that as long as I keep it covered, as long as I maintain my vigilance, it cannot escape. The thing that was my stepmother will be trapped in its own reflection forever, existing in the space between what is and what seems to be. A monster finally caged by the very mirror it used to hunt, but I never stopped being afraid. Because I know how patient it is, how eternal, how inevitable. And I know that one day, despite all my precautions, someone might uncover that mirror. Someone might let the light in. Someone might give her the chance she's waited for all this time. I only pray that don't be me.